Some months your calendar's completely packed, and other months you're finding crickets. And so you've got good leads, you've trained your front desk. So why is it that you're on this revenue roller coaster and leads booking are completely inconsistent? And in this video, I'm going to show you how to actually lead your front desk so that you're not having to micromanage and you're not having to fix inconsistencies and finally just step off this revenue roller coaster and be able to trust your front desk again. Now, this is episode 4 of Fix Your Front Desk series. And if you've been following along, we've already covered in the first episode how to actually fix your front desk and why they're having insurance objections. And I need to think about it. And how do we actually overcome that? And then ultimately, how do we fix drop offs in some of the subtle places that your front desk is actually probably losing you leads? And look, whether you want to train your team or replace them, that was what we covered in episode 3. Now, even if you got the right person in the seat, you still need the right systems to actually lead them. And that's what I want to cover in this episode. And in this video, I want to show you number one, why most practice owners completely burn out trying to manage their team. Number two, the three-part series and system that actually keeps your front desk performing at a really high level. And then number three, how do we ultimately keep your team from going off the rails? And how do we keep them accountable without being on a call or having to listen to every single call that they take? And in fact, one of our clients that actually implemented many of these systems had a really awesome front desk person, but their revenue was swinging wildly from 25 to 30K months all the way down to 7 to 10K months. And they were just tired of it. And after we helped them implement this simple front desk system and how to actually lead them, they've now had 5 consistent months of over 25K without constantly having to micromanage everything in the practice. So let's get to it. Number one, why do most practice owners completely burn out when they're trying to actually train their front desk to get where they want to go? And here's the reality is, as you as a practice owner, you're doing everything. You're absolutely in the weeds of marketing and sales, and you've got new staff members and new docs, and you've got front desk, and you've got all the other little fires in the office as well as in your practice. And that's ultimately what completely leads to all sorts of problems. And it leads to two management philosophies as it comes to the front desk. And we either get someone who micromanages every single step, or we get somebody who undermanages everything. And both have their problems and their challenges, and they're ultimately leading to your burnout. And I used to do this in my practice all the time. And I was the latter early on. I got a kind of a laid back personality, and I completely undermanaged absolutely everything early on. And then when we weren't as busy as we wanted to, I'd completely freak out and I'd do everything possible to actually to actually be able to get our front desk back on track and our practice back on track as it related to sales. And then on the flip side, once I started to learn some of these things, I started to freak out and I wanted to micromanage everything. And ultimately, that just led to a lot of frustration in my staff, right? Hey, Chris is kind of two different people, right? Just some days he's all over us and some days he's not. And that's exactly what's happening in your practice as well. And then ultimately, it potentially leads to turnover or underperformance. And now you are having to replace the front desk or you're constantly having to train and you think, they just can't figure it out. And that leads to you burning out because it's just one other person or one other thing to worry about. And so if we're micromanaging everything, I mean, we're like listening to phone calls and we're like over their shoulder and we're having meetings every single week, your front desk is not going to be very receptive to your feedback because ultimately you're in their ear way too much. And it helps to them, it paints the picture of, oh, they don't trust me, and that's you listening to calls, and that's you constantly asking about something, and that's you constantly being at the front desk or constantly jumping on phone calls with them and asking them every single detail, as opposed to having high level conversations because you actually trust them. Or on the flip side, we undermanage, right? What does the undermanagement person look like? This was me to an absolute T, which was, hey, things are good. Just keep following leads. Here's a script, and here's some training videos from a mastermind that I'd been a part of. Hey, let me know what questions you have. And ultimately, this created all sorts of trouble because then 3 months later, I'd be like, wow, that lead slipped through the cracks. Wow, that lead slipped through the cracks. Oh, and now I just watched revenue being poured out of my door, and it led me to freak out. And so, what did I do? I started to train at that point. And I would do that. I would train, we'd get gung ho, revenue would start to creep its way back up. And then ultimately, 3 months later, we're back in the same boat again. And that's what we don't want to have happen, right? Is I don't want these leads falling through the cracks. And I don't want my staff to underperform for 3 months, perform well, and then underperform the next 3 months. And that's what was happening in my practice. And it was leading to a revenue roller coaster. And so now I started to spend more and more money on ads. I started to spend more and more time trying to get leads in the door and walking through processes. And really, I just didn't have a clear means of actually consistently coaching and leadership and holding my staff accountable for those things. And so we don't want to over, we don't want to under. So what the heck do we need to do? And what I like to have is a three-part leadership system that holds my front desk accountable. And the first big non-negotiable that many of you guys don't have at the front desk is I need clear metrics for the front desk. I got to have some clear KPIs. What is it that defines success at this position? And most of the time, it's new leads being booked to actually showing up for evals. And that's a very easy metric to track. And so my front desk is accountable to those metrics every single week and ultimately every single month. And so I like to look at things like leads being booked. I like to look at how many leads didn't book. What is our total like visit volume per week or schedule utilization, right? All of these things are really good, solid metrics to help me get an idea of how well my front desk is staying on top of these leads as they're coming in. So you got to have clear metrics. And ultimately, your front desk needs to know what those metrics are. So a lot of you guys track things, but your front desk just doesn't know what that accountability actually looks like, right? The next big piece of this is we want to look at some level of consistent check-ins. Ultimately, a lot of you guys probably need to start weekly, and then eventually you can start getting into bi-weekly. Me and my front desk, we actually meet bi-weekly. We used to do this weekly, but ultimately, it's a time for us to check in. Hey, what challenges are you having? Let's look at your KPIs over the last couple of weeks. Here's what I'm seeing. What are you seeing right now? And I ultimately want them to give me some feedback as to what they see in the data. Let's take, emotions out of it and let's not make emotional decisions. Let's just simply look at the data and find out what it is that the data is telling us. And once we have that information, now we're carrying dialogue consistently, and your front desk knows we're going to be meeting. So I need to be accountable, need to know my numbers. I need to be accountable to ultimately what's happening. Or I'm going to reach out beforehand and actually get feedback, right? And that's the last big piece of this is consistent feedback loops. What leads to underperformance is feedback 6 months after it's happened, 3 months after it's happened, even a month after it's happened, right? Hey, I had a bad phone call. I got a lot of no shows. I got a lot of cancels. I got a lot of insurance objections. And now not getting consistent feedback. And that's where the metrics and meeting on a weekly and bi-weekly basis helps you get some of these things and have ways to be able to give feedback on it, whether it's a quick video, whether it's a quick chat in the office, whether it's a quick phone call, being able to help them. And what happens in my practice now at this point, where my front desk says, "Hey, like I'm getting a lot of insurance objections. How do I help fix this?" Or I'm getting a lot of I need to think about it. Or hey, it's the holidays. How do I handle some of these people who are saying, I need to wait till after the holidays? And she brings these things up proactively to me now, and we have this relationship where we can give clear and consistent feedback to get where we want to go, right? And if we're not making clear and consistent things, we still have this constant and continual feedback where, hey, maybe we go in and we listen to some phone calls. Maybe we listen to them together. Maybe we need to role play. What is it that we need to do, regardless of the fact we're kind of lock in step here as we are getting through this. And so have clear metrics, have check-ins to actually be able to help stay accountable to those numbers. And then let's give consistent feedback on things that we don't want to see happen. Because if you're not giving feedback, you're typically reinforcing negative behavior. And then when you go to actually reinforce it, it's gone on too long at this point. And so now they grow to resent you because you are bringing this feedback up later on down the line, which is obviously what we don't want to have happen as well. And so the final step of this, right, is hey, let's avoid the burnout. Let's have a clear and concise leadership system in place. And then the last one is how the heck do I stay out of the weeds and not micromanage this person? right? And this kind of goes back to almost point number one a little bit is how do I just avoid burning out, right? It's like I don't have time to keep up with all this stuff. I don't have time to listen to every phone call. I don't have time to track every single lead. And you don't have to manage every single detail. Some of you guys like to be in control, and I've been in this boat before as well. You just need simple systems to help you with that. And that's where having those metrics, have them on a scorecard. At the end of every single week, my front desk sends an end of day and end of week report. And so I can clearly see these things and they're clearly aware of them long before they become a major problem. Create that culture of communication as well. How do I create a culture where my front desk actually reaches out to me on a consistent basis, right? And I get slacks from my front desk on a very regular basis, sometimes three, four, five times in a week of challenges she's having. And it's because we've created a culture of communication, not one where she's scared to come to me with challenges and problems because then she never will. She'll try to hide them. Or on the flip side, because I actually show her that I care about these things and I'm going to follow through on the leadership that I have and the strategies we have in place, that she's ultimately going to, want to bring them up and I'm going to hold the line on them as opposed to just letting them kind of get kicked down the road. And that culture of communication from me as well as her is ultimately what really makes this thing tick. And most of you guys don't have that. You don't have any level of communication or any level of consistency or any level of continual feedback loops, and that your front desk can just they just go by the wayside and ultimately they'll quit or they'll quiet quit on you where they're just working but even though they've kind of quit in their minds. And so I want to make sure that is not the case. And then lastly, let's create that culture of ownership, right? Where, hey, I'm going to own up to anything that I haven't, if I haven't given you enough tools to be successful, but also I want you to take ownership of challenges and things that aren't going well either. And there's an ownership amongst both of us. And again, we do that because we know what defines success. And when success isn't happening, we can have grown up conversations about it. Not confrontational, of course, but just ultimately having a conversation around, hey, I'm going to hold you accountable. And I want you to ultimately hold yourself accountable to the standard that we have in place. And most of you guys don't have that. And when you hold that standard, you have a lot of peace of mind. I can take a vacation for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe even a month. And I know that I would have an idea of what's going on at my front desk without me having to go through and look at every nitpicky detail. I've got three or four dashboards that I can easily pull up, and it's going to give me a snapshot of everything that's going on. And I know for you guys, that would create a lot of peace of mind for you. It's one less thing that you have to schedule a meeting for, and you could just stay on top of. And you want your front desk to be a self sustaining machine so that even if that person leaves, you still have the pieces of the puzzle in place, as opposed to, wow, this rock star that I've created left, and now you have nothing in place. And that's ultimately what we don't want to have happen. But if you can lead and not babysit them, you're ultimately going to have the best success in your practice because they are the gatekeeper for patients coming in and patients being repelled from your practice. So now you have the systems to manage your front desk without constantly being in fear, without constantly micromanaging them. And in the final episode of the Fix Your Front Desk series, coming in episode 5, I'm going to show you how to ultimately scale this system if you've got multiple people on board. And if you want to add more than one locations or you want to hire somebody else, whatever the case may be, or maybe you have turnover and you need to bring somebody else on board, I'm going to create a step-by-step check system for you so that you can see how your front desk is measuring up to other practices across the country. So check out episode 5 of the Fix Your Front Desk series. And if you want more information like this and you're not a part of our school community, check out the link here on in the description. Join our front desk school where we've got everything I know about the front desk located in there, and that's going to get you where you want to go. Talk soon.